Democracy. This video presents a framework for thinking about democratic politics in the EU. The first thing to note is that at the national level, parties and elections operate hand in hand in the so-called competitive party government model. Elections are the central mechanism of representative democracy. It operates in two ways. First, elections allow voters to choose who governs. Voters choose between rival candidates for public office. The winning candidate becomes the head of the executive. As such, elections allow voters to throw out incumbents that fail to deliver on the electoral promises, prove incompetent, or become less popular than a rival group of elites. Second, elections allow voters to choose policies. Political elites present citizens with rival policy proposals. The parties and leaders who emerge as winners from the democratic process then have a mandate to implement their policies. Democracy exists if there is a choice between competing elites and policies, and if there is a reasonable chance of alternation in government. A competition over policy and public office are combined in a single model of competitive party government. According to this model, the leader of the party that wins the election becomes the prime minister, and the party acts cohesively in the legislative arena to implement the policy agenda presented in the election manifesto. Meanwhile, the losing opposition tries to demonstrate the failing of the politicians in government. In this model, voters exercise an indirect influence over policy outcomes. There are alternative models that allow voters to exercise a direct choice of office holders and the policy agenda. First, in the presidential model, voters directly elect the head of the executive. Parties may play an important role in selecting the presidential candidates and running their campaigns. Nevertheless, presidential elections tend to be dominated by the policies and the personalities of the individual candidates, not by the party manifestos. Second, through referenda, voters can choose policies directly. Here as well, parties do play a role, advocating one side of the argument against party arguing for the opposing side. Oftentimes, the outcome of the referenda depends on the popularity of parties on the different sides of the argument. In particular, unpopular governments tend to lose referenda regardless of the merit of the policy, as a section of the electorate treats the referenda as a chance to display their discontent with the ruling elite. Following the logic of competitive party government, commentators on EU democracy have argued that there is a democratic deficit in the EU. As a way to rectify this deficit, there has been reforms to make the European Parliament directly elected, to strengthen its role in the legislative process, and in selecting and controlling the EU executive, the Commission. In purely procedural terms, the democratic deficit of the EU has been overcome. Members of the European Parliament are directly elected. The European Parliament plays a substantive role in the legislative process and is heavily involved in the selection and control of the executive. With the 2014 elections, the choice of the Commission President is also linked directly to the outcome of the European Parliament election, as all main parties present their candidate for the post. However, the European Parliament election still fails short of producing a unified ruling coalition that is capable of implementing a clear policy program. Also, given the high majority requirement in the Council and the proportional electoral systems operating in EU elections, it's hard to see how we would get alternation in the composition of the ruling elite. As we will see, most legislation needs the support from a broad coalition of centre-left, liberals and centre-right in order to be adopted and properly implemented. As the EU fails to provide genuine competition between rival elites and a policy agenda, it is difficult to conclude that the EU is a genuine democratic polity in the way that political science normally understands this concept.